Asbestos is a known carcinogen, and there's no safe level of exposure.
Mesothelioma is a miserable disease.
They must fight a truly global battle.
We want to demonstrate our enormous respect.
Keep up the good work. I look forward to the day when ADAO is no longer needed.
Fix it. Fix it. Everything in the world can be fixed.
Keep me in your heart for a while.
We do, in fact, have 10 minutes for questions and answers. But before we do that, could I just have everybody here give another round of applause to all of the wonderful speakers we've had this morning. It truly was a lot of excellent information we had shared. I see a hand in the back, and you know the questions can be for anybody who was here speaking. Linda has a microphone, and we're gonna in the back, Linda.
Quick question, what about Russia? Russia has by far supplanted Canada now, and as the chief producer. It's 1 million tons a year. They export all over the world, to China, to India. And the guy who was the head of what used to be NIOSH in Russia, we visited with him in '75 in Moscow. He's now I'll remember his name in a second. He's now the defender of the asbestos industry there. The name will come to me, but could you speak a little bit about that? They totally deny officially that it's really a problem, that they can work safely. The same things they say in Brazil, Canada, the asbestos industry was saying. Thank you.
I personally don't have any experience with the Russians. Barry Casselman. Barry, would you be prepared to speak to that? I want to give Barry a shout out too. There's probably nobody in the world who knows more about the substitutes for asbestos that we could use. I'm grateful to him, having learned from him. But Barry, you might speak on the Russian situation for us.
Yeah, one of my things I do is consulting with the World Health Organization. And the WHO Europe office has tried to reach out to the former Soviet Union countries to get them to stop using so much Russian and Kazakh asbestos. And so they held a meeting in June in Bonn last year, and the Russians came and did absolutely everything they could to block any form of progress at that meeting. The Russians are almost criminal in the representatives of the industry that they send to meetings like this. It's like having the asbestos industry there in the form of a government representative, and it's extremely difficult to deal with. Notwithstanding that, there's a group of Women of Europe for a Common Future that work in the Eastern European countries and in Russia, and have held conferences in Russia and in Kazakhstan and in other countries, the Ukraine coming next. And so there are people trying to do something about this in Russia, but it's a very difficult place to operate. And the tactics of the industry are almost thuggish in terms of the way they tend to deal with criticism on the international stage as well as at home.
Sounds very Canadian somehow. Do we have some more questions? Celeste.
My question is for Dr. Sturman. Oh, great. Could you elaborate a little more on the clinical trials that are going on? Like, how many participants have you had, and what is the criteria for being able to participate in the trial?
Thank you for your question. Probably time does not allow me to go into all the details that we would need. I do refer you to either my website or the University of Pennsylvania's website for some of the information. The bottom line is that our clinical trials now are for, we hope at Penn, a clinical trial for everyone with mesothelioma who presents and wants to be part of a clinical trial. So if you've just been diagnosed, our goal is to be able to provide a clinical trial for everyone. Thank you. I truly think that should be the goal of every clinical program, because we don't have the answers. We don't have the cures. No one program has the right approach. So the only way to learn is to share information and to learn from every patient. So we hope to help every patient. What we tell patients is that when they participate, they're going to get personal benefit, but also help others with the disease, and that's what our goal is. So every patient, we collect the data, we learn from them, and we try to both help them and the next patient down the road. So if you have disease which is surgically resectable to disease which is not, we have a clinical trial for those patients. For patients who have progressed beyond frontline therapy, we have trials for them as well. And our goal is not to keep you at Penn necessarily. Our goal is to steer you to the best available clinical trials. So we try to have clinical equipoise. So if a patient fits the criteria for a clinical trial of one of our colleagues elsewhere at the NCI or at MD Anderson or Sloan Kettering, our goal is to direct you to where we think we can provide the best care, so, or where the best care can be provided. So in terms of the specific inclusion and exclusion criteria, I'm happy to provide them on an individual basis, but globally, I think that we're trying to provide trials that are promising, but don't necessarily have all the answers yet for all of our patients.
Thank you. We have a question right here up here in front.
This is the 6th or 7th asbestos mesothelioma thing I've been to. 2 little questions. One is cement always have asbestos in it? And number 2, I am a California widow, and I get very envious of some of you people that we have no information out here. My husband was diagnosed and told, you're critical, slightly treatable, fatal. Bango. We luckily, I did on the internet, found a doctor that treated it. Other than that, this idealized world of you will be involved, we are not involved here. How can we get our doctors to realize this is a sincere illness and it's not just, like the rule book says, fatal? That's my question.
Right. Well, Andy may want to comment also. First of all, not all cement is asbestos cement. The reason you use asbestos in cement, and it's been used in construction materials and water pipe and sewer pipe, is to lighten the amount of cement materials that you have to use. The binding properties of those fibers allow you to get by with lesser amounts. Interestingly, just a comment on can you find non-asbestos cement? As I mentioned, I've been doing work in China. I've been going there for about 20 years, studied a number of asbestos factories. When the Chinese hosted the Olympics, I made some inquiries because they did a huge amount of building in Beijing. And I was told, much to my surprise, that they were using no asbestos cement in building all of the new structures in Beijing. And I was a little shocked and surprised and thought, well, maybe the government is coming around to the idea that the use of asbestos cement is not such a good thing. But not to be too surprised or ended up being disappointed to find out the truth. There was, in fact, no asbestos cement used in the construction of the Olympic venues and housing and so forth. The reason for that was not that they were concerned about asbestos per se, but they were concerned that if athletes from around the world heard that they had used asbestos cement, they might not show up at the Olympics and live in asbestos cement structures, so they made it they built all of those facilities with asbestos-free cement, and then when the Olympics were over, they're back, using their asbestos cement like always. So certainly you can make concrete structures and use concrete without asbestos. As far as the other point, Linda, do you want to comment? Do you know about resources here in California for physicians, programs that are strong in mesothelioma work?
Well, I'm sensitive to your comments, and I know that you come and you support, and we're happy to have you here. And there's a sense of anger that comes through all of us when we find out the history of what's been known and how our loved ones have suffered. Of course, we invite you to join in all of our efforts. If you're looking for a direct medical patient organization. I think that the Mesothelioma Applied Research Group does well, and I think that you have doctors here. You see that we also interface with doctors. So I would recommend that you introduce yourself to some of the ADAO leadership. Yes?
My question is, how do you get the local doctors that do not recommend you to anybody? I found the doctor after 9 months on the internet. My doctor, who knew he was there, did not meet him.
And that is a common problem. I think that collectively, maybe some of our doctors, our science advisory board panel, can maybe come up with an informational tool that we can use. But I also learned the hard way myself is I would probably go back and I would write that doctor and say, by the way, you misdiagnosed my husband, and I think that this literature might help you learn more. And I actually did that to Alan's pulmonologist because Alan was misdiagnosed for 9 months, and our doctors never got it right either. So you're not alone in and this isn't a physician bash by any means.
No, we're not.
But many local doctors
This,
don't
in fact, is a
understand.
tool or
Correct.
something that the Science Advisory Board can put online. And we've got people like Dr. Sturman here. There are other leading research units around the country. We heard from Dr. Harbert and others, and maybe we could put that up as a resource on the web for anybody who comes to ADAO. Question here.
A question for Dr. Sturman. 3 years ago, Dr. Cameron from UCLA gave a presentation, and one of the things at the end of his presentation he said was that he was about to launch an attempt to create a national registry for mesothelioma patients and to link centers like UCLA and others so that not only were you doing great things for the people who came to you, but that each would know what one another's were doing so that there could be in the general population of the facilities, people would learn more than just what they were doing. I'm wondering if that has happened at all.
So there is no registry yet for patients in terms of how they respond to individual treatments. There has been developed a registry of mesothelioma pathology, which I think is a good first step, which is that there is a data bank based out of the University of Pittsburgh to which every physician in the country who's doing research in mesothelioma can access, which allows physicians to get pathology specimens to test a new drug, a new genetic treatment, a new biomarker. So that's a great first step. Ultimately, yes, we hope to have a registry of all patients in all clinical trials so we can learn from each other. But I think there are two organizations that are doing that. One is the Mesothelioma Applied Research Foundation, which is putting together a clinical trials unit, ultimately that will allow better sharing of this information and better distillation of this knowledge. And then ultimately the organization that really is responsible for this is what's called the International Mesothelioma Interest Group, whose meeting is this September in Boston, which is the organization of physicians and scientists around the world that are working in mesothelioma. And it's a relatively small group, but at that conference, which meets every other year, all of the information that's been generated scientifically in the past 2 years is reviewed. Now, how do we get this out to physicians in the community and to patients and families is a bigger challenge, but I think using social media, using websites is going to be a great way of accessing this information. Again, knowing that you have to know what sites you're going to for the best information. But in a disease like this, which is fraught with so many problems for patients and for families, and for which there's a relatively small number, a registry would be ideal. And I think that what Dr. Cameron's vision was proposed, I think is something that we really need to work towards in the future.
Well, we'll have one last question in the back, and then we'll continue with our day's activities.
Yes, I'm the Executive Director for the Pacific Meso Center, and Dr. Robert Cameron is our scientific advisor. Dr. Cameron is working on that database. We're looking for funding for that right now. But to answer Peggy's question, he is a foremost expert in the field of mesothelioma. And unfortunately, too many doctors do not collaborate enough. So very many patients go to see doctors and they've never dealt with mesothelioma before and don't know what to do. And I constantly hear from patients coming into the clinic, we looked and looked for Dr. Cameron. We couldn't find him. No doctors would recommend him to us. We finally found him on the internet. So we have to work more together. This is a small community. and we have to be united. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. One last round of applause for all of our speakers and all the commentary from this morning.
Keep up the good work.
I look forward to the day when ADAO is no longer needed.
Fix it. Fix it. Everything in the world can be fixed.